And here we are again, another Thursday edition of Figuring It Out. Today, a little bit different. We have, of course, Matt Wilson back on to figure some things out, but then also Ryan Bradbury on the professional services side. Ryan helps us out and is one of the lead security consultants doing pen tests, which kind of leads us to the topic, which is getting more out of your penetration test. So I know we chatted beforehand. I don't know if you guys want to kick it off in terms of kind of what the basics are, and then also what you think we can do or tell people to do to get more out of their pen test.
Lead sounds so important, Ryan. So why don't you lead the conversation?
It's Ryan.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Well, I appreciate the invite, especially right after I gave myself my own haircut here. So that's a good debut on the internet here. But no, I think it's pretty interesting because when we're talking about the different challenges, the different obstacles that everybody's facing today with a largely remote workforce, but not just on that front, are there things that we can be doing, to get more out of our penetration tests and more out of the assessment work that we're doing? So, I don't want to steal your thunder here, Matt, because this is definitely, your forum here. So I guess, how would you like to dive into this?
Well, I mean, look, we recently talked about how to buy a pen test. So to me, this was a natural progression, something you and I had been actually kind of background processing some other kind of presentation on for some time. So again, it's rooted in, you're doing this pen testing thing all the time, Mr. or Mrs. Client, right? You have an external, you might be doing an internal, you might be doing wireless, whatever the perspective and the focus is, awesome. And just consider modeling a different threat, and not to the detriment of this isn't stop doing an external pen test, unauthenticated, uncredentialed, and more of a, hey, since the threat model has changed a bit for many organizations, as you said, you might have, 20 users that regularly VPN, and now you have 1,500. Does that change your threat model? How does that, impact your organization? Do you have to monitor different? So I think what we've encouraged clients, especially clients we've worked with every year, and I think you've been at the forefront of this, honestly, is let's try to do something a little bit different. Let's not just same old, start with the external, try to move to internal. It's more of a, hey, let's talk about the ways we commonly get in, and let's put us inside, right? And that assumed breach is a term. There's a lot of things that, a lot of ways to put it, but assumed breach, I think, is a good way to think of it. I don't care what the terminology is.
I think that's interesting. And I think the point of moving from 15 users to 1,500, right? Does that change that threat profile? And are we, positioned in a way to detect, to prevent, to block that stuff? So the assumed breach side of it, and saying, hey, if you give somebody just basic user access on the VPN and they try and do something, malicious, will that be caught? Will that be blocked? Detected? All those good things. So yeah, I think that's super interesting and something that people should be.
And it's efficiencies, right? We're gonna not spend time spinning up a phishing campaign potentially. I mean, we still might, but or we're not gonna spend time doing some recon in the same way, because we're gonna now put that time towards being in the environment and finding something interesting, right? You could list off whether it's default credentials or LMNR or NBTNS or whatever. There's things that you still might find, but let's start somewhere, right? Put us inside. Let's, Mr. Miss Client, you benefit from us already, jumping right into the focus, right? Getting data instead of just getting there.
I wonder if there will be an asterisk beside pen tests done in 2020. If there's any vulnerabilities that come out of people that are typically doing an annual pen test and kind of any assessment, whether it's a threat and vulnerability assessment or a pen test, because they had a big change in their infrastructure. And then, kind of as you guys were talking about that or introing this, it started to hit me. We always advise people to do assessments when their infrastructure changes drastically. So, obviously, there's a good reason to do it if it has changed drastically for any company. But then, we talk about people going to more remote work and how it changes their infrastructure. Well, then how about the opposite, right? When we go back to sort of normal processing, what have we changed from a technology perspective, or just overall what we're doing that, again, opens us up to risk? So it is kind of interesting And like I said, I wonder if anybody will kind of put, you know, a little bit of a caveat when they look at their assessment results for this year to say like, well, yeah, but this stuff was going on. Or maybe, you know, we're going to see gaps where people were doing this or kind of have it written into their security plan to do assessments or pen tests every year, and they're skipping it this year. I mean, we've heard from a number of people that are putting it off because they're so focused on other issues. What if they put it off completely? And then, you know, when they're doing any type of audit, whether it's, you know, like a SOC 2 audit or just kind of regular compliance type issues, they're like, yeah, we put it off. We took a, you know, a risk-based approach to figuring out if we needed to do an assessment, and we didn't because of everything else that was going on.
Yeah. And look, who's going to really fault them, right? I mean, in a world of furloughs and layoffs in the economy. So I think we're going to see that. On the flip side, right? We've talked about how some people have stuck to it and they still want to do, you know, they're not relying on the auditor kind of giving them a pass for this year or a mulligan or something like that, right? Like a little bit of a do-over. So
yeah,
we'll see.
I think that's definitely an interesting point. And I think looking at it from an infrastructure change and potentially two big ones this year, while people are trying to cut back and reduce some spending, is there a way to be creative, look at, you know, the threats that are facing you now and address those in a way, say, you know, to Matt's point with the assumed breach, if we're slimming down some of the extra activities that we generally do doing a pen test, and we're focusing on these sort of new, more, I guess the more obvious would probably be a bad word, but the bigger threats that are facing now with mostly remote workforce.
I would say focus might help. Focus might help with that. Like if somebody came to us and said, listen, we did a pen test last year. You know, there's been a big change for us. Financially, we're not sure if we can do another full pen test, even though we said we're doing that for the year, but we've had everybody go remote. And, you know, this is the technology that's in place. I know for BTB, we'd probably be like, well, we could probably take a look at only that particular thing that changed if you really wanted to, but still give them an idea of, you know, like what the delta is between the sort of like normal and then what they changed to kind of help them out. And maybe if that's, you know, if we figured anything out, maybe that's it, is that maybe you have to be more specific. It's not just like, oh, I need to do this annual assessment every year, but like, okay, now let's just very specifically take a look at what changed because of all of this, and let's assess that part. And then next year, maybe go back to the whole thing. So kind of like still getting the bang for the buck, but at the same time, you know, slimming down what they're doing. I don't know. I guess it's an approach that some people might be able to.
But I think that connects to something that we've kind of not pushed, but like encouraged people to do for is what threats do you want to model, right? Because that's really, I think that's what you're getting at is, okay, this year we got to be different. So we're going to model a specific focus threat, but it was always what perspective, right? That's a threat model, internal, external, wireless, someone on the network that's, you know, whatever already in, we're calling it assumed breach for sake of discussion. But so I think that's the real lesson that we can impart here is, you know, to get more out of that pen test, you want to have an idea of what threats you care about. And that sounds very obvious, but we talk to so few organizations that have really thought that through. They're just kind of in that, we do pen tests because we do pen tests because we do pen tests. And that's great. We love doing them, but we don't want to be the guys that phone it in, you know, every year and just give you the same exact, you know, results. That's not helpful. You're not moving the proverbial needle forward.
And I think that's interesting. I know that's something we've talked about, Matt, is you know, you enjoy when those conversations come up, when it's, hey, we want to take a look at this from a different light, or we want to make sure we're addressing everything. And almost kind of, you know, you enjoy when, you know, customers or folks that you talk with try and kind of push back and get some additional information about, you know, how would you do this if it was you, and take all of that information into consideration before saying, hey, we're just going to do, you know, a rinse and repeat of what we've done previously.
I think any good vendor needs to do that, right? It's trying to fit the services or solutions for what the client's actually facing, as opposed to, you know, jamming it the other way. Like our solution's going to fit whatever problem you have. But I think that's just an approach. That's more of like an overall approach that I think everybody should take. If we want to add that, we can cut that piece of this conversation out and put it back in the how to buy a pen test conversation.
And kind of as we wrap up here, I think the real takeaway is if you want to get more out of your pen test, make sure you think about what you're trying to model. Maybe this year in particular, although it's probably good any year, you think about what's different in your environment that you can spend some focus time on. I think that'll kind of guide you. And that's how you'll, not just get more for the money, but it'll actually help you improve if you take the results of that and apply it. So
yeah,
anything
absolutely.
else?
No, Bradbury, what's on next week? I think you said you wanted to propose a topic of home self-haircuts for figuring it out how to do it appropriately, right?
We're going to see Matt Wilson in his front yard trying to give himself his haircut.
I think it's supposed to rain next week. Yeah.
Okay,
It's
yeah,
like
safety
tornadoes
hazard.
and stuff.
So Matt, what are we discussing?
Well, how about something we all decided to take up in a quarantine? Any new hobbies, habits, maybe funny things we've seen happen in a quarantine in and around our world? I think we've all had something happen or decided to do something. So
Okay, cool, very cool. Well, listen, thank you guys both for this this episode. We'll call it of Figuring It Out. We should start numbering these. This will be our first season, I guess. But Matt, as always, thank you. Ryan, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it and appreciate the insights and the work that you do and you overall.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.